Thanks for tuning in to the Animal Control Report podcast, where we help debunk the dog catcher stereotype. A lot of times people think it's the dog catcher when they hear about animal control officers, but here on the Animal Control Report, we change that by taking you inside the day-to-day operations of animal control officers. Not only will you hear stories of animal control officers, but you'll hear from industry experts as well. We are also part of the Keep It Humane podcast network. We have some amazing partners there, so check them out at keepithumane.com/podcast network. You can listen to all the animal control and animal welfare related podcasts there. And let's continue to help people help animals.
Dun, 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 dun. I think that's the football start, like the noise that they use.
Oh, I guess, I guess I can kind of hear it.
I'm not good at recalling sounds. Anyway, this is the Animal Control Report with your hosts,
Ashlee Bishop.
And Ashlee Bishop.
And I'm Daniel Ettinger here trying to make up noises that do exist, but not in the tone that I tried to make them up. Anyway, we're the Animal Control Report. Check out our website, keepithumane.com, and all the socials, Keep It Humane or the Animal Control Report. We're pretty much everywhere. Follow, like, share, do all that good stuff. I got to start with you, Ashlee Bishop, Texas. Beetlejuice. Oh no. So,
imagine.
Well, before we even do that, hold on, because we need to check in, and then Ashlee was like, "Don't spoil it." So I guess you can't spoil it, but I want our listeners to know that the other day, first off, I want to apologize to both of you because there was a text chain. We talk about that a lot. That we have our group text chain, and I sleep with my Apple Watch on because I like to, calculate my sleep number.
Don't make us feel any worse.
No, I'm apologizing because I get this text message and it keeps going, and like on your wrist it'll just vibrate and you feel a message come in, and I get like 3 in a row, and I look at the time and it's 5:30 in the morning. So
it's your fault for moving into another time zone.
And so then I just respond, "It's 5:30 in the morning." And I felt bad, so I'm sorry.
You shouldn't feel bad. I felt bad. I keep forgetting you're in a different time zone.
Well,
yeah, but I still could have been like, I could have just said nothing, and I was like, "It's 5:30 in the morning." I was like, that's not cool. So I wanted to apologize. So I'm sorry.
Dan, if you had an Android, you could actually set it to specifically not take text messages from specific people until a certain time of the morning. And then you wouldn't have to worry about it.
What fun is that? There's no fun there.
I have to agree with Dan.
Now, what I usually do is have it on Do Not Disturb, but since I wake up at 5 in the morning, well, I try to at least, because get the day rolling, get going, just all fresh, get up early. I usually set my alarm for 5, and then I don't get out of bed till like 5:45, 5:50. I can't get up. I've been trying. I want to go run in the morning, and I can't do it.
It's too early.
Running's overrated.
No, it's not. So you know what else is overrated? Androids.
All
right. We need our Beetlejuice update, dude. Like, what I need to see this, but like,
it was so good. So I didn't realize that the OG one had been made in 1988. I wasn't
before
even
you were born.
I was not born yet. I wasn't born
That's the
until
year I was
1989.
born.
I was not born yet, but I was concerned because sometimes when movies come back after that long of time, it's not good. That was not the case with this. I think Tim Burton hit it out of the park. I think it was great. Bringing Jenna Ortega in, I'm a big fan of her. I think she's doing amazing work as a Latina. It was just so good. I can't say it enough. I think the storyline was great, especially with being unable to bring in 2 of the OG characters, 3, I guess, because of, I guess, certain things that have happened with, the movements of the things that happen in Hollywood that are not the greatest. But they did a fantastic job. Michael Keaton, just chef's kiss. I mean, you wouldn't be able to tell that this was so many years later. I mean, it's the same Beetlejuice. it is this, it just, it was so good. I was sitting there, I had my husband's thigh, and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was so good. I hope they hit it out of the park. There was a lot of older people in this movie, or in the
Dang.
theater.
Did she just
So
call us old?
hey, I'm
I
old
mean,
too. Okay,
well,
look at
but
all
she
this
said
gray hair.
old. She said older.
Yes, older. There's a lot of older people in the movie theater, which was I was glad to see, but it was great. I just I can't say it enough. I've been waiting for this forever. When they announced that they were coming out with this movie, I was like, I'm gonna see it. I'm gonna see it. And it was great. I don't have enough
Can't
good
wait.
things to say. It's
I'm
so good.
excited to go see it. Yeah.
I'm sad because my kids are not interested in seeing it because they weren't
Oh,
huge fans of the first one.
oh,
I mean, they are 9,
mm.
so
So just force them. I was forced to go to
I
many
will.
movies. Yeah.
How
Can
do
I
you think
just
I
say
got
we're
them to
probably going
like
to see
Harry
it?
Potter?
We're going to see an uptick of dogs named Beetlejuice. Just saying.
I see
Guaranteed.
it.
Yeah. They'll be like little pitties, like little cute pitties.
Nah, black and white cats.
Or that.
Or black and white pitties.
Yeah.
Or just straight black cats.
Mm.
Wisconsin Bishop, what you got? Anything today? You've been, both of you, I just want to say this too. Hold on. That
Uh-oh.
both of you have been like, you're resilient. And I know you're both dealing with a lot. And so I just appreciate you waking up every Sunday morning early enough to do this show because that there's a lot going on.
There is. I feel like it's going through the three of us. Like Dan was going through it first, then it was Wisconsin Bishop, then it's me.
Yeah.
It's like rotating through the three of us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I had a really tough case on Friday.
Mm.
No.
Um, after getting out of a very long emotional meeting, there was a dog that was wandering and it was walking around like completely neurologic, kind of having seizures and stuff and just walking in circles.
Oh,
And an officer responded because they just got there before me, and I said just keep an eye on the dog. And of course it's down like this super steep embankment, and she said the seizures we're talking like grand mal seizures.
oh.
And by the time we got there, the dog was gone. um Deceased, gone.
Okay, I was gonna ask deceased
Yeah,
or like
yeah, no,
that sucks.
deceased.
That
And
sucks.
um of course it actually had tags and everything.
Ugh.
um so we pick up his body and we go to take it back to the house. They're out actually looking for the dog, like
Ugh.
people that actually cared about their dog. Come to find out he had a seizure disorder. um and they had an underground fence, so I'm kind of wondering if he wasn't like feeling out of sorts because of a seizure coming on and then took a shock and
Yeah,
it
it just
just kind of,
elevated it.
yeah.
Oh,
um so that was a tough one because I mean we obviously see when people are care about their animals and are looking for them, but it's not nearly as often. So for that kind of an outcome, that sucked.
Oh, that's tough.
I want good stories.
I
Ashley,
know.
Texas Bishops above here, like, hey, we need to start doing this good story of the. I forget how we are going to terminologist. Is that even a word? Terminologist?
Nope. And
I'm
not going on the
so.
list.
I literally slept like 3 or 4 hours. I'm using that as an excuse because I'm so tired.
Dan, I have a list of Danisms for a reason. You don't get to use that as an excuse.
Needs to go on
Well,
a shirt.
terminologist, that could be a thing.
No, like the list of words that you come up with, we need to put it on a Keep It Humane shirt.
Well, we let our guests suffer through our opening long enough. So let's introduce the CEO of CalAnimals, Jill Tucker. Thanks so much for being patient with us this morning and also agreeing to come on the show.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you. I mean, me specifically being in California, I probably have like a more of an excitement, but I'm sure the Bishops both have some excitement too.
We're always
For sure.
excited for people outside our jurisdictions. It's always fun to see what everybody else is doing and what we can learn from one another.
Absolutely. And Jill, people can go to the website, which is calanimals.org, calanimals.org. Always get the comms and orgs wrong, but and
Always.
check that out. But can you give our listeners just like a background on you? I know you've been in animal shelters prior to getting into this position, and just kind of lay the groundwork for your background and kind of what CalAnimals does, maybe on a day-to-day, and then even on a larger scale.
Okay, sure. So I've been in animal welfare since I think I started on a board in 2002. So it's been a minute. I discarded my career in software and moved across the country to run a Humane Society in Vermont at the end of 2003. And ran that shelter for 4 years, then did a statewide consulting project in Vermont to coordinate animal cruelty response. And then ended up I met my husband there. And it was like a Hallmark movie where you like meet the guy with the flannel and the beard and buy a 200-year-old farmhouse and fix it up and have a cute baby. And anyway, but then we ended up moving back to California. I'm like 5th generation Californian, so this is home to me. And I ran the Santa Maria Valley Humane Society on the Central Coast for a number of years, did a big capital campaign, a new shelter, and that was fun. And then I went to Woods Humane Society and did a merger and some more capital projects. And so anyway, now I'm with CalAnimals. I had joined the board of CalAnimals. Our legal name is State Humane Association of California. And that organization has been around since 1909. So all of the leaders of animal welfare organizations in the state have been doing their best to work together for more than 100 years now. And
That's impressive.
yeah. And I think it was back in 2018, I was on the board at the time. State Humane Association of California merged with the California Animal Control Directors Association. So we essentially had 2 state associations doing pretty much the same thing, collaborating on legislation, collaborating on a conference, but then like kind of meeting separately, and it didn't make sense. I would also say back in the day, our lawmakers in Sacramento were super confused about what the hell the animal people wanted. Because when we were not organized, we're all going in with like different perspectives and ideas, and they're like, "Is this bill good or not? Is it?" And so fast forward to now, we like work together and have a united voice. We have regular meetings with our legislative people from HSUS and ASPCA. Both San Francisco SPCA and San Diego Humane are politically active, and best friends comes to the table. They've had our back on some tricky legislation, which has been helpful. So everyone gets together and we talk through these bills and figure out the best path forward. And so that's been useful. But CalAnimals is really our state association for the shelters and animal control agencies. We have over 290 members now, member organizations. And we do a lot of, we offer a lot of trainings. We have the state's Certified Animal Control Officer program, which is voluntary. In California, you can't roll out any requirements that the state's not willing to pay for. And so that's a tricky business here. They consider it an unfunded mandate. So we couldn't actually require that our animal control officers go through a certain amount of training, but the establishment of the voluntary program is a good start. And what else do we do? We have an executive leadership program, and we a lot of what we do is just about collaboration and networking and support. We have an annual gathering of CEOs with a conference every year, which is very amazing. So as a former shelter CEO, it is very lonely at the top when you've got the pressures of managing your team and of reporting to a board, and then the public that like wants your head half the time. It's tricky. So these having an opportunity for the leaders to get together, and I think initially I've been to every one of them. But like my favorite thing is, and I think we're going to be having our 11th coming up next year. So I think initially a lot of it was to blow off steam, but it's been a really good gathering for us to really talk about where we're headed as an industry. So I've got, what I'm most excited about with CalAnimals right now is that we've got a statewide campaign in the works that will be focused on encouraging the general public to adopt animals, the people we're not already reaching, and to help shift the perception of shelters. And this is exciting to us because we're obviously in a situation right now in shelters. Like, it's tough. We have too many animals, adoptions are slow. We've got all of these things outside of our control contributing to higher levels of intake. And we really see this like broader population as the big untapped market of where we could make a difference. I don't know about you, but most people I meet out in the world have not adopted their animals.
We had a guest on recently that talked about a study. I think it was through Shelter Animals Counts that said only 20% of dogs are adopted from shelters.
Yep.
Which is, every time I go to the dog beach, I look around and I'm like, bought. Oh, adopted, bought.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting concept. Didn't California create something too where pet stores can't sell purebreds anymore? They have to get them from shelters. Is that a thing?
Right. So pet stores can't sell animals at all, but they can provide space to shelters and rescues to conduct adoptions on site.
That's cool.
So that helps. But I think where we are with just humans in general, and where I think we've gotten off track as an industry, is that I see us sort of like in the corner spinning out in our misery. Like our hair's on fire, we're overcrowded, there's infighting among organizations, there's blame, and then we've got our advocates that are just like freaking out based on what they're seeing in our shelters. And there's this whole population that's like, they might have heard we've got an issue, but to them it's like, that sucks, like we kind of hear about other social issues that we don't have the bandwidth to absorb.
Sure.
But knowing that, most families want nice pets, we need to be marketing what we have. Like, the messaging needs to be it's got to be the what's in it for me kind of thing. So what I'm seeing, from our shelters is sort of this relentless, like, we're overcrowded, come save us. But what you're asking somebody to make a 10 to 15 year commitment that's going to cost them a lot of money and change their life. And so why are they going to do that? At the end of the day, we're all self-interested.
Sure.
And so, we adopt the animal that we think is going to fit in with our family and be awesome. And we get shelter pets because we know they're awesome. And I think that we've really tapped out on this part of the market that's like, wants to feel like they rescued. Again, that's self-interest. They want to feel like they rescued. So, but we have those folks. But I think everyone else needs to know that shelters are not sad and scary. And that,
how do we do that, Jill? How do we do that in this current climate where the pressure is on us to basically adopt out every animal or release every animal, even the ones with behavioral problems. And so what I start to see is the trends where people are reading articles or seeing news reports of this aggressive dog that was adopted from a shelter, but the behavior wasn't disclosed. And so now it starts to put even more of that back to that dog pound image on us. So how do we get there? Like it's like I don't know the term because I'm bad with words, but like uh, the one side, it's like, we're really doing great work, but you're making us do work that we normally wouldn't do. And then that animal becomes a problem. And then it creates this view from the public that animal shelters are bad places because the animals that they adopt out aren't healthy or they aren't safe.
Right. That is a problem. I mean, I think at the end of the day, the shelters, the shelter staff and leadership need to be committing to do what's right and what's in the best interest of the animals and the communities. What I do know, some of these large shelter systems in our state are really struggling, and a lot of their struggles kind of relates back to the elected officials trying to sort of like pander to their market. And on some level, I think, as everyone's going forward to be the most, productive, ethical, effective organization they can be, they need to turn off the noise of, I mean, there's the need for people to say like cause drama. Like there's, I can think of one community that has incredibly high, their live release rates in the upper 90s, public shelter. They got all the programs, they're doing all the things, and they still have advocates that are throwing a fit at everything and trying to get leaders chased out because they're upset that shelter like doesn't want to adopt the dog out that just like rips someone's face off. But that shelter's like, that's not in the best interest. If we do that, nobody wants to adopt animals. We violated public trust.
Exactly.
All of those things for sure. And we've got insurance issues. I don't know. Have you guys talked about that on this podcast?
Pet insurance, like for pet health insurance or pet insurance for like actual
liability insurance for nonprofits. So we don't hear about it as much. Municipal shelters tend to self-insure.
Mhm.
And they're still, I mean, we've seen gnarly dog attacks with multi-million-dollar payouts in California. And that's expensive. And it's also gets plaintiffs' attorneys really excited about the opportunity to pursue those cases as damages go up and up. What we've seen in our industry is that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations struggling to maintain liability coverage because the dog bite payouts are so high. And statistically, it's not that there are more dog bites, it's just that the cost of everything goes up. So the cost of the claims, the average claim has more than doubled in California over the last number of years. And I think there are insurers that have been in the market that are like, they kind of insure all different types of industries, but once these claims start rolling in, they're just bowing out. They're not interested. And insurance is a math game. Like, they don't, their losses can't exceed what they're bringing in premiums. And so we're just not worth it. So there are some insurers that have stayed in the industry, but we do ourselves a disservice if we're, knowingly putting dangerous animals out there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's hard. And I definitely understand the pressure everyone faces, but you can't make everyone happy. And you got to know that, I mean, every decision that every shelter makes affects everyone else. I mean, we're, as an industry, our risk is pooled. So even if we've got some shelters, doing everything they can to do this business as safely as they can. If the other ones are having, lots of multi-million-dollar payouts, it makes all of us like less desirable.
And I think, and that's a struggle too in itself, where it's just like, how do we change that rhetoric? How do we change, for me, I'm in a situation, I'm the municipal shelter of the area. Most of the surrounding counties don't have, facilities. There's a nonprofit organization who contracts out with two of the major cities and counties there, and we're battling. Well, they're the kill shelter down the road because they're the city owned shelter, but they're the nonprofit organization who is no kill, and they're trying to get everything out. And how do we all come together for the same front without putting such big labels on one another? You know what I mean? It's such a struggle within the industry already, where it's like everybody's battling one another for that no kill status. Oh, we're 95%, we're 98%. How do we fix the struggle amongst ourselves when we're all trying to be part of the solution?
And that's a great question. I mean, and I think what's fascinating about this industry is how all these people who largely want the same things find so much to fight about.
I know. Thank you very much.
That's amazing to me.
It's almost like they have a whip and they just fuss from a distance. I don't understand. Like, this isn't it's so bad. Like, I don't know why we have to have this divisiveness.
Yeah. I don't think we do. I think, first of all, I think as an industry, we need, the solution is to focus on what we want as opposed to what we don't want. So if you've heard the expression, like, what energy flows where attention goes, or something like that. 100%. I mean, that's how we get where we're headed. So when we're blaming or fighting things, even fighting language, like, it's not, the thing we have to remember is there's people on the other ends of all of this. And when you consider people, like, everybody has an opinion, and their opinion was formed by their knowledge and experience. And so in that respect, everyone's opinion is right to some degrees, because that's their perspective and that's where they sit. When you tell people they're wrong, that's all they do is dig in and get defensive, and then the divide gets bigger. But unfortunately, and even just if you think about just in society and politically, like, we're kind of, society is kind of in this like agitated state. And then we've got like all this information overload, and then algorithms feeding us and our ideas and our paranoia and disdain and hatred towards one another. So, and I think some of the trouble we have with the public with this, as we're working together, is the information overload and the lack of understanding of what's underneath it. So to me, when I think about how, people are freaking out and they're like, just stop killing, right? And we're like, there's more to it than that. But to me, it's the same thing as people being like, close the border. Like, that's a pretty complicated thing. Like, there's a lot that goes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. And so I think, again, us focusing on what we want and what we need to be successful, and having those solutions at the tip of our tongues, is absolutely where the gold mine is for all of us. So, because what I see is I see a lot of shelters, and I mostly work with the shelter leaders who are facing a lot of pressure and criticism. And so if they're criticized, they'll often get defensive, and then they dig in. I know years ago, even we've got this amazing Google group in CalAnimals. We've got over 700 professionals from around the state on it, sharing information. Years ago, people used to fight on that Google group, and it was lively. But I'm glad we don't do that anymore. But it was, back then people fought over language, and they fought over whether or not community cat programs were a good idea. But it was this thing, like, people got more and more dug in. As time's gone on, we've really, and especially in my role in CalAnimals, stays somewhat like agnostic. Like, look, we're just here to show you what's out there, to provide education opportunities. Let organizations share what's working for them, and then you decide. We afford you the respect to decide what's going to work in your community. For people to want to change something, they have to feel like it's their idea. There's got to be this buy-in. I mean, people don't make meaningful or like happy change based on criticism. I mean, I think we probably see this in our interpersonal relationships. If somebody's like, it feels like passive aggressive, like, you never, or you should, or that doesn't feel like, yes, I want to do this thing for you. So yeah, I just think it's a matter of focusing where we want to go. I do think, with respect to a campaign to shift perceptions around shelters, we know that there are a lot of challenges in there. Like, the kill language is so ingrained in the public, and I know you guys have talked about this a lot, and that people just the random Facebook exchange. Don't, is it a kill shelter or is it a no kill shelter? And don't take it to the shelter and it's gonna die. And then we have national organizations that are like doing their marketing saying shelters killing shelters.
It's
like,
amazing
and at the same time, we're recognizing that a lot of people, like, I think normal people who are like, they're people, they like have jobs and families and they want a nice pet, that all of our drama is quite the turnoff. Like, that's, for people to think, believe that shelters are sad and scary places where animals go to die. Like, who wants to walk into that? That's scary.
Jill, I have a question, because I'm looking at some of the bills that have been introduced in California. What is the dog and cat euthanasia prevention voluntary tax?
It's a tax checkoff fund that it was in place for many years, and it like sunsetted, and so social compassion legislation ran a bill this year to revive it. So we're excited about that. But it's just basically, when people do their tax returns, they can elect to throw some money in that, and that money then ends up getting distributed for spay neuter. There's also a pet lovers license plate fund that does that. It's a little bit amount of money. I've been on the review committee for those grants for many years. So usually, like, we get $1 million in requests and have 500,000 or less to give out. So funding is always an issue.
Can we transition into Hayden's Law and how that affects California in general? Because it was pretty new to me coming here last year, and then just trying to understand that, and I guess the right to pull.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, Hayden's Law passed a few decades ago, right?
90s.
And it was intended to help save more animals. It lengthened hold times, required certain things like, emergency veterinary care, and releasing animals to rescues. There are a lot of elements of that ended up going through the Commission of State Mandates and got suspended. So what's interesting is, let me show you California.
Oh, do you have the book?
This is our law handbook. We have this many laws pertaining to animals.
Just really quick, can you hold that up again? So I just want to, and then turn it to the side. so they can
It's
see.
big.
Yeah. So this is for Kelly and Tabitha with the Humane Educators of Texas. They put together a law book for Texas I think they do it every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Yeah.
want to say, like, our book's bigger. So I'm just out there, girls.
Stop.
To be fair, theirs is an 8.5 by 11.
I mean, but I'm just saying, like,
So funny.
oh,
So what's
But everything's
interesting,
bigger in Texas.
Yeah, it
right.
is.
Sorry, Jill.
That's all right. So what's interesting is about the law still reads that some of these things from Hayden laws is still in effect, including these like lengthened hold periods. But within the handbook, we've got these like footnotes that to look at. We also posted the Hayden link to the decision from the Commission on State Mandates that said, actually, you're not required to hold the animals 5 to 7 days, that it's, so it really, so the true state law is that we've got a 3-day holding period for stray animals. So our laws can be confusing, and we've got, we've been really excited to have Bruce Wagman, who is an awesome animal law attorney. And he's been doing webinars for our members. San Francisco Shelter Pals program provides free legal services to shelters and rescues around the state. And so he's an attorney, like representing more than 50 shelters at this point, to help understand some of these laws. So in there, the tricky one that you mentioned about the release to rescue, there is a requirement in state law that upon request by a 501c3 organization, you have to release an animal before it's scheduled euthanasia. And over the years, there was, and including the state attorney general's opinion, was that shelters had some discretion in that, so that if a dog just mauled somebody, you don't have to release that one. And everyone was operating under that assumption for a long time. And then there was a lawsuit that challenged the County of LA over their policy to refuse to release some of them, and it was decided that that was okay, and then it was appealed, and the appeal court said no, like their literal interpretation of the law was that this says prior to its scheduled euthanasia, you have to release it upon request to a rescue. They did say also in that decision.
That's crazy. That is bonkers.
That's bonkers. And then, but that we also have discretion over which rescues we work with. So they could conceivably, shelters can decide what rescues are most appropriate or equipped to take on a super aggressive dog. They can make sure, if they want, that those organizations have liability insurance. But yeah, so that happened, and we're pretty concerned about it. I mean, it's dangerous.
And I think one of the few episodes we've talked about Lou Ann Strickland and her hoarding in Colorado, and what she was doing was essentially the same thing without having the law to support it, which was going and having deals with shelters to take their animals that were on the youth list. And she was involved in this as far back as the 80s. And I know specifically in California, there have been some recent cases where some of these rescues are getting investigated themselves for becoming hoarding facilities. And so it's scary in that aspect of, like, we're just like the euthanasia concept or death just in general to humans. I really want to be mindful of how I say it. Is, people have their own beliefs on death or the afterlife, if there is such a thing. And so I think that that plays a huge role into why we make these emotionally based decisions and not just look at it practically. And I think being in this industry as long as I have, it comes down to the simple facts. You know, is this animal going to be healthy? Is this animal going to be safe? And if we can't answer yes to those two questions, then the best outcome is humane euthanasia, in my opinion, based on, you know, what I've seen in this industry. And so going back to what you said a little bit ago was like there could be different ideologies in this profession, but it's almost like as soon as you have a differing opinion of that individual or organization's ideology, you are no longer welcome in that circle. And that's the tough part. Is there's no doubt the three of us, and you included, Jill, like having worked in the profession as well, want to see the best outcomes for all animals, but we're also realistic when it comes to what's going to be the best for our communities. And I don't know why the pedal is to the metal with this idea of we have to save everything. It's a feel good story, but it's not practical. And that's
What is it though? That's the thing too that people don't realize. Like, is it a feel good story? Like, I don't understand how people see having a dog sit in a kennel for the rest of its life, how that is okay just
yeah,
because it's alive. I mean, kennel crazy is a thing. It is a thing. It is a thing. And it's hard to watch. It is hard to see an animal that comes in that's had a long length of stay, to see it deteriorate like that, and I don't understand how, people think that that's okay. I don't get it.
Well, and even if they're not in a kennel, I've used this with people who have owned dogs that I declared dangerous, and they were trying to make the decision whether or not to um, put the dog down. And I said, the dog is likely in a state of constant anxiety and um, just mental unease that you can't just, with us, we get to talk about things. We have counselors, we have medications, we have things that we can take and we can try to understand, but you can't do that with a dog. Like you can medicate them, sure. And in some cases that works, but you have no idea what that dog is going through mentally on or off the medications. And is that really humane to say, okay, no, we're going to force this dog to live in this high anxiety mentality?
yeah.
Good point.
I mean, I think we've really got to the point where I think it's gone on long enough, and there's a lot of people now that have a bigger voice when it comes to what we feel should be right in our profession. And so I think we're going to continue to utilize that voice to just speak out for what we see on a day-to-day basis, from our, not just our own eyes, but what we hear from our peers and our friends in this profession as well. So
Well, and I think this also goes back to just our own infighting. Like
yeah,
normal
Right.
people don't want us to put animals in their neighbor's house that are going to like attack their children or kill their dog. Like,
sure.
so this, I think this boils down to our own kind of like drama and misery in us trying to do really hard work and make really hard decisions that are emotional. But I think, again, if we instead of even like looking in that direction, focus on what we want as opposed to what we don't want. Like we can say like, we don't want animals warehouse and animals attacking people, blah, blah, blah. But what we do want are, people and pets to be able to stay together. And we want the public to come in and see the amazing animals we have and adopt them out. you know, we want resources to ensure that everybody that wants to get their pet fixed can do that. Everyone that wants a pet can afford to have one. I mean, you know, there's all these things that we could put our energy toward. And I think back off that pedal of like, you know, because again, I think it's just like, then you get into arguments about, you know, how, in some person's perspective, they think a miserable life in a cage is better than death. You know, it's not what I think is the right thing to do, nor the risk of like attacking someone. And it also, I mean, it fails to take into account like what is it we're here for, and what's the best way to like get these animals in and out and into homes. It's not by scaring the public,
Yeah.
you know, or hurting the public. It's yeah, it's fascinating to me. That whole decision was fascinating to me because under state law, our animal control officers are expected to protect public safety and get dangerous animals off the street. And yet there's this legal decision that's like, okay, now you can send them back out. So
a lot of people times forget too, you know, there's a huge zoonotic portion of what we do as well. I mean, you know, with public health and safety is a real thing that people don't realize that we do. You know, I mean, rabies is still a thing, you know, rabies is still a thing. I mean, there's other things too, you know, endoparasites that can go from dogs to humans. And, you know, I mean, it's just, I don't think people realize, you know, kind of what we're tasked with. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's been a week too, so I'm just kind of just vomiting all the things.
Well, we need voices, Jill, like yours. And one of the things that you and
Agreed.
I talked about offline was my thought process that we've brought up on the show, and I'm going to keep bringing it up probably until we either get something similar to it happening or the show no longer exists. But it's the idea or the aspects of changing the way we view animals in this country. And so I talk about creating some sort of like tax rebate at the end of the year when you file your taxes that you can claim up to, I don't know, the magic number is 4 pets, as long as a couple of the things are met. So they have to be spayed and or neutered. They have to have a current rabies vaccination. I mean, they make us show proof that we have our own health care or we get dinged on our taxes. So why can't we benefit from having and owning animals, like and get some sort of reprieve, whether it's we had to pay $1,900. And I just before the show started, we talked about my old dog Tucker. I think he's still alive. He's with my ex, so shout out to Tucker and my ex. But he has cancer, like terminally ill cancer, and she's paying a ton of money and like to, you know, prolong his life really shortly in the grand scheme of things. But like there's no reprieve from that. Like you can't write off those fees that you paid to try to help your animal. And the whole point of it is it's twofold. Clearly it's like helping and influencing people in a financial way where we know a lot of people are motivated by that. But more importantly, it changes the way animals are seen in this country because now we look at them as more sentient and not property. And I think we have that big uneven, well, they're property, so they shouldn't be treated differently. Like they should just be treated no different than these headphones that I have on. But the reality is, I think we're like here now where we know, no, they're not property. They are living, breathing, sentient, emotional creatures. And so we should be able to, just like children in some aspects, maybe the credit is not the same for an animal that it is a child, but there should be some sort of tax credit, in my opinion, and ability to write off certain medical expenses.
I would love to see a tax credit. I would love to see socialized medicine for you know, a Medicare program.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge, veterinary care is just, it's a big obstacle for a lot of people. And it's why some of us don't have more animals.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to people all the time. They're like, I'd love to get my dog a friend, or even a third dog or whatever. But I just, you know, I'm not sure I can swing a surprise $4,000 vet bill.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's just, yeah, it's a huge struggle, and then too, every community is different. You know what I mean? Every community is absolutely different. And I think, as you mentioned, Jill, the fighting within the industry as well, we all can't do the same things because it might not work. I'm in an area where we are flooded with college students. So I have, during the summer or during the school time, we run on the calendar year, and that's just how it is. We're we were able, our length of stay is very short during the semesters, and then it's really long during the summer, and that's just how it rolls here, whereas before, when all the way down south, we're just full all the time, and it just, that's how it is. And I think for us to get on kind of the same page to realize, like, we need to be throwing ideas at each other, and whatever works for you, great, but we all need to come together to throw those ideas, so that way we can take those ideas and see if it works for us or not.
And I agree that, shelters, depending on their location, should be doing things differently.
Mhm.
In California, our Central Valley is way overpopulated. I mean, there are animals running the street. I think that the county shelter in one of them is, it's just over 4,000 puppies a year coming in.
Wow.
And so in that community, yeah, adoption's could be a harder sell because it's so oversaturated that people could
Mhm.
think, I want a dog, and there's going to be one that shows up in your yard.
Yeah.
there's your dog. And then there are, more affluent areas or areas where there's just stronger adoption demand. I had the privilege of working in one of those when I ran Woods Humane Society in San Luis Obispo. And I had so much fun there, to me, because it was like a rescue on steroids. Like, we had this beautiful building, and at the time when I started, it was like empty. The staff were kind of like, what should we be doing? And I was like, let's save some animals here, right? And it's just a different perspective of, like, we're aiming for higher intake because that's how we're making a bigger difference. So we started just massive transports and ended up, tripling our adoptions and all of that in a couple of years by just taking advantage that we're in that kind of a community, and just cranking animals through, because the oversaturated areas don't have that luxury. So it's very different. What works in one community is not going to work in another. And again, I think telling people that they're wrong and what they're doing is like the most unproductive thing we can be doing. And I think the same goes for our work with the national organizations. Like, they're focusing where they feel is the best use of resources for them to make an impact. So they're all doing different things and focusing in different ways. And there's some benefit to that. For me, there's benefit to having diversity on our board, and diversity among our membership, is being able to have conversations and have different perspectives, and people kind of pulling in different directions help us make sure that we're being more thorough in the decisions we make, and ultimately, I think at the end of the day, all the different perspectives make us more effective.
Amen.
Jill, how can people, so with CalAnimals, again, CalAnimals.org. So just talk about the sign up and the training that's available. And it's not just limited to California. So how can people, like, view some of the trainings and such?
Well, we have on our website a big training section. There's a page called Online Learning that's free. So we have a ton of free recorded webinars. We have had 2 recently that I think everyone around the country would enjoy watching. One is on customer service, and one is on open adoption theory. They're both very good. And I think particularly some of the feedback I got on the customer service one was from, and again, I work largely with leaders, but there are some of the middle management folks that have said, you know what, we don't even think our leaders realize how bad our customer services because of the culture in some of our organizations, because they're like physically removed on site. So they're not seeing what's happening, or they're not reading their Yelp reviews or those sorts of things. So yeah, people can get on our email list. There's ways to sign up on the website, and then you'll get an email when we are scheduling new webinars, but there's tons of free training there. And then we've got some more fee-based training that it's often more geared toward officers. And a lot of that would apply universally around the country in terms of good content. But yeah, so there's a lot of good training there. And then our CalAnimals members also have the option to participate in an executive leadership program. That's a free program, but they do have to be members. We do have organizations outside of California that are members because they want to like get in on the connection and the resources and the discounts on training and all of that, which is great. We've got Guam is a member. We've got a woman in thinking, is it Alabama? And then Oregon and Washington. We've had Montana in there. We've got the big shelters in Hawaii are members, and then Nevada. So we encourage people to join us if they want to get in on that. There's a lot of support available. And one kind of final comment I want to say on the trainings and on how we're putting things out there is that I see the flow of animals through our facilities as similar to balancing a budget. And in my career, my little special skill is financial turnarounds for nonprofits. And the way you do that is all the things in there. Like you're looking at every expense, you're looking at every bit of income, and it's all the tiny changes of what you're already doing that amounts to balance in the end. And I feel like that is the same in how we manage the flow through. If as officers get training, or as our leaders get training, and you want to try a different tactic or something new to improve your return to owner rates, that makes a difference. If you make your adoption process less restrictive, that can make a difference. If you want to treating people well, I mean, it's all the little interactions. If people have bad experiences, if they're treated badly or they adopt a dog that attacks them, that's going to affect, that's going to affect their desire to come adopt again, and what they're going to be telling everyone in their community. So I do think it's all the little things that add up to really where we have potential to bring balance. And the other thing I want to mention is we had we need to be paying for advertising in this industry. We have to advertise our product. On June 1st, we had a statewide Adopt a Pet Day, and it was the ASPCA paid the adoption fees for the day. And San Francisco SPCA kicked in a bunch of money for advertising. And so I think it was about 75,000 went to Google and Meta ads. So, and we hammered on very positive messaging. This is not about us, and it's not about overcrowding, and it's not about saving a life or rescuing or you being a good person. This is like, we got freaking cute animals here, and you should come check it out. And they're free on this day. And the data we got back from post-adoption surveys, 46% of the people that adopted that day had not previously adopted from a shelter before.
Wow.
Huge.
That's huge.
Huge.
So if we think about, I often hear the defeatist, we can't adopt our way out of the problem. Well, there's a lot that goes into balancing things, but that math ain't mathin' if you look at how many people are getting their animals elsewhere. So if we did a calculation just based, if we had an assumption that 30% of our pet acquisition market is shelters and rescues, an increase from 30 to 34% would close our life-saving gap in the state.
Yeah.
So that's why we're investing in this to see if we can like apply some pressure to that particular leverage point to help increase the traffic and the people interested in adopting.
I know we're kind of up against the time here for the show, but one thing I wanted to ask and we didn't get to, and we're happy to have you back on to discuss it if you think that it may take some more time to discuss. But coming from Colorado, we had a governing board that was that it's the Pet Care Facilities Act, and it's a government agency. I don't know how else to define it, if there's a better term for that. And they've been doing a lot of good things recently. They're really expanding their role in the state, which can be a good and a bad thing, I guess. But I see it as a good thing because there's no true governing board in the country for animal shelters or animal control. Do you think, I guess that just for like a short answer, would that help us or would it hurt us?
It would help us, and it, in fact, is the other main initiative we're working on. Is we've got a committee built right now that's looking at creating some sort of regulatory structure for shelters and rescues in the state based on what PACFA is done in Colorado.
Okay.
So
yeah, I mean, they've done some.
It is, yeah, we see huge benefit in that. I'll tell you, where I sit, sometimes I end up being the complaint department for the shelters in the state, which is like wild and frustrating. But in some areas, there really is nowhere for anyone to go. They can't, and animals have just a vastly different experience depending on the shelter that they go through and the resources in that community, and whether or not the board of supervisors in that particular area even cares or has the bandwidth to focus on animal issues. So yes, we are excited about that. And I think the more we can focus on that type of infrastructure around like recognizing the importance of the work we're doing and supporting it, and really, initially it will just be to hold everyone accountable to the state laws that we already have. That could just be immensely beneficial for our industry.
Totally. Yeah, I'm looking forward to just hearing more about that, and continuing to what we do here on the show or what we do out in the community is really important. We always talk about it in the aspects of like we can't help animals if we're not helping people, and so it's trying to find a way to make that, however, break down any of those barriers that may be in place. So cool. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time today. There's a lot of good stuff, and it's crazy how fast an hour can go by. I feel like,
especially when there's such good information.
I know. You're amazing. You're amazing, Jill. Keep up the good work.
Thank
And
you.
we definitely need to have you back on so we can talk about all the other stuff. So I think, you're doing great work. And I think you have a great outlook on kind of where we need to be, as an industry overall. And, we need a lot more people like you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate this. I love your show. And yes, I find myself listening and like wanting to comment on everything. So I'm
well,
jump on Facebook.
Well, Texas Bishop is creating a new segment called, did we name it yet?
No. Why are you
It's
putting me on the spot?
Good stories, something we want to, she's absolutely 100% right. And I really,
Positive stories.
there you go. That's perfect. Is it pause like you spelled in the chat, or pause like pause? Like
PAWS. PAWZ.
all right, who got a positive story to wrap it up? Let's just start it now. Putting everybody on the spot. I got one.
Good.
You're both thinking. Unless you got one, Texas.
No, go ahead.
This is Texas. All right.
Please don't.
So last weekend, and you both know this, but I saved a racing pigeon that was lost. Because most people would just be like, oh, that's an ugly pigeon. Why bother? And I saw it. I walked into TJ Maxx and I looked over, and on the way in, like as I'm walking in, it registered. Oh, yeah, that's a racing bird. Just because A, it looked super clean. B, you could tell that it had bands on. C, there were no other birds around it. I was like, ah, dang it. So then I leave, I was like, what I said, I made a mental note, like when I leave TJ Maxx, if it's still just chilling, I'm gonna have to do my thing. And so I leave TJ Maxx, and sure enough, he or she is just chilling in front, like, is that what they say? That's probably not what they say.
Sure.
That's more of a turkey, but okay.
Whatever. It's a turkey pigeon. And it's actually not even a pigeon. It's a what?
Dove?
Yeah, it's a rock dove. That's just a whole nother conversation for another day. However, so I go over there and I kneel down like I would to a dog, like, come here, boy. And then my dog's like, what? And then I get the pigeon to like kind of show some interest, but not a lot. And then there's people out there, and now I'm getting embarrassed because I have insecurities too. And so I'm like, no, like this is a racing bird. I'm gonna catch it. And they're like, yeah, you're really gonna catch a pigeon. And then I literally was like,
You're like, watch.
and then I was like, look, see, you see these little bands? And then I picked it up and we got it safely to a shelter. So he's doing fine, or she's hopefully doing fine. So that's my positive story. But I guess that could be a wingative story because it has wings, or a talon story.
You're winging it, Dan.
All right. Well, thanks for listening to another episode of the Animal Control Report, where we like to say we help
People?
help
Help animals.
keeping your man.